What's up, guys?
What's going on, everyone? Zach and Nick here.
What's up?
We're on our third episode of the Doors. Today, we're going to be discussing self-care. We have a few rules as well as going over just what self-care actually is. I'm going to let Nick kind of describe to you a little bit about what it is, and then we'll kind of go from there.
But first, thank you for tuning in. And guys, we're the developers of our own opportunities, reinforcing success, and it's time to open some doors.
Let's do it, guys.
So, jump into it. You got it.
All right. So really today on self-care, there's so many subcategories that we could go into and really break down, but we're going to focus on three main ones. That's going to be your mind, your body, and your soul. So mental, physical, spiritual. That's kind of how we're going to start with things. We're going to start on the physical side of things. And with self-care, what I've learned and over my years, and I went through a really bad hardship in 2019 where literally I lost both my grandparents, the woman I dated for 7 years, I lost her, I lost a dog, I lost a job, literally was almost homeless. And then I built myself back up, and literally it was through these three different things that I had to do.
Look at you now.
Yeah, we're on the come up. And we hope that you guys are kind of on this journey with us to better ourselves and ultimately to unlock our ultimate potentials. So there's three rules of self-care, for any self-care that, this is kind of just what I created. So number one is just going to be stick to the basics of life. Simplicity, compassion, patience.
Yes.
Very, very, very easy. The second is going to be to create a no list and a goal list.
So, once we dive into that, we'll talk about it a little bit more, but I think I've seen it somewhere, but it was a very interesting thing is that everyone sets these goals and these standards for themselves, but they don't sit back and really talk about what they're not going to do. And I think that's just as important as making a list of things that you need to do, or like a to-do list, but a not to-do list, so something to do that. And then that eliminates a lot of that confusion and other things that you're going into, especially if you're doing it for self-care. Definitely don't do this. You're going to learn a lot more and be like, all right, I don't even got to worry about that. I can just avoid that whole scenario completely, and you move forward. It's going to help you take those steps you need to do go in the right direction.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Very well said. And then the third one, this is just for me. This is something I got from a poet. His name is Rumi, and one of the great spiritual teachers that I've actually found.
Yeah.
I found a bunch of his books literally when I was at my lowest, and his name is Dr. Wayne Dyer, rest in peace. But he turned me on to this poet named Rumi. And one of the things that he said, and this is going to be my third rule of self-care, is have a mind that is attached to nothing but open to everything.
Yeah.
And what that really, really means is just you need to let reality be reality and let things flow naturally. Because they're going to fall forward no matter what. You just have to let them. And constantly worrying and constantly trying to change things that you have no power over, you're just going to lose a lot of energy and a lot of time and a lot of sleep.
Yeah. So to jump into those three different, the three different types of self-care that we're going to talk about, and we also have those three basic rules, and that's going to be our biggest takeaway from this, and we're going to stick to those most of the time we have through this podcast. And everyone has their own version of self-care, and that's what's really, really important to understand, is that what is self-care to me isn't always self-care to him.
Yes.
But at the same time, there are very important things that do matter and that everyone has to follow at the same time. Like a physical form of self-care that's really important. And I'll tell you one thing. Growing up, I don't know if it was my parents or me. I'm gonna blame it on myself because that's the right thing to do. But I grew up and I didn't brush my teeth as much as I should have, and I've had teeth problems because of it. I've had to, every time I go to the dentist, they're like, "What are you doing?" Luckily nowadays, because of past relationships, and then being like, okay, you need to fucking brush your teeth, and holding me to a standard. Now I hold myself to a higher standard because of that. But there are some physical types of self-care that are really important. Brushing your teeth, hygiene, showering.
Your diet, that all falls into that physical portion, as well as sleep. People underestimate sleep so much because sleep is something that you need. You hear it all the time, you can sleep when you die. Yeah, you can, but I guarantee you your body's not going to respond to it, especially if you're training right, you're dieting, you're doing all these things, you're working a 40-hour job. Sleep's one of the big ones. So we're going to hop right into the physical portion of self-care, which we kind of explained a little bit of it, but it could be numerous different things. Your sleep, your diet, your stretching. You like to hike, you like to walk, you like to lift, you like to sleep, golf. Really, anything that really boosts your confidence and really gets you out there physically. Because ultimately, what we want for self-care, we just want to get the oxygen in the blood in the body to be moving. And you see it a lot of time in people, especially lifters. I know a lot of power lifters, a lot of weight lifters, and you see a lot of times that their muscles, they become so big and so bulky that not really much blood and circulation is going through there. So you see when they turn to like yoga or they go to like a stretching regimen, they actually increase their muscle size as well as increase the connective tissue and it helps their joints and helps their ligaments. So, ultimately going on the physical portion of self-care, kind of run from what's comfortable for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Forget safety, live where you fear, destroy your reputation and work on that character. Because, that's what that physical stimulus is actually going to provide to you.
Like, I'd like to go into a few things that we do for our, like, each of these different types of self-care, definitely. But I think it's really interesting that the way he's going into these bodybuilding is because I did gymnastics for 14 years. And I took for granted almost the amount of stretching we do because of it. And like nowadays I stretch maybe once, twice a week, if that. But the physical aptitude of what you do and how much people don't actually stretch. Like I see so many people walking around with so many problems with their body and
lordosis,
they don't like
cryptosis,
who sits
there's
there
so
and
much
like taking care of your body. That self-care for your own physical body is so important, whether that be, again, like he said, his diet. Like we've been physically training insanely for the past couple of days. For the past couple of weeks I've got him doing handstands now, and he's doing pretty great. But and he's got me on the muscles.
Got him on the bodybuilding weightlifting split.
The intensity that you guys that is needed for some of these physical types of self-care is intense. But where's just the same amount of attention you guys put on for taking care of your body? I'm making sure that injuries are fully healed. That's one of the things that people don't really take into account. It's really, really crazy is, of course, in gymnastics, cheerleading, everything you're doing is everything that I've done. And some of the major sports out there, football, track, baseball, swimming, any of these things, like you're in such a competitive circuit that it's like, okay, I'm hurt, and what can I do to get back as fast as I can? I think one of the most in tune with this people that I've ever met his name is Jonah Henson, and he ruptured his ACL. He did a couple other things to his knee, and he's one of the most physically fit individuals I've ever met, and I saw him come back to the best of his ability by really focusing on rehabilitation, icing, taking care of himself the best he can in the situation he was in. And that is like what I think athletes and different people need to really take away from things is rest and making sure rehabilitation is just as important as the physical demands of what you're doing. And if you aren't following the regimen of rest and rehabilitation, you're just harming yourself over and over and over.
And I think ultimately, going on alongside what you said is developing a proper routine for yourself. You see a lot of people who, they get up. I'm one of those people. I wake up at 3:45 every day. I jump straight into like an hour meditation, and you do that every day for 7 days. Guess what? You do it morning and night. You're getting 14 hours, literally right there worth of self-care.
So before, just interrupt you real quick. Something really interesting is that to break a bad habit, so every time you do something bad, and you don't want that habit to happen. So
it takes approximately 21 days to develop a habit.
And also, you have to do that habit if you want to break it and you want to do the right thing. If you want to do the right thing, you have to do that every single time you've done it wrong. You have to do it 10 times correctly to get it. That's approximated. So my coach used to tell me, that's a lot of fucking times.
Yep.
So, but that takes a real mental effort to do, and that's being really aware of the situation you're in and moving towards that. So that's really interesting.
Yep. And I'm going to jump back up on, my spiritual side of things. I read this book. It's called The Path to Victory, and it's literally all the acts of Jesus Christ. And one of the parables that he uses, and he's really talking about people in this aspect, is he's planting seeds. So you do the same thing with your brain, like we're talking about these routines and like
Yeah.
everything you want to do, meditation, fitness, yoga, you want to lose 5-10 pounds, whatever this is. When you're trying to develop this routine, you have to realize that if you drop your seed, let's say that thought that you want, you're dropping the seed in soil. Your body is the soil. Well, you put it in rocky soil. Ultimately, it may grow a little bit, but it's not going to grow to its most efficient form.
Yeah.
You put it in great soil, you put it in nourished soil where it has good things, you're putting good things in your body, you're drinking water every day, your diet's really on point to a key. You're physically fit because you're training every single day.
Yeah.
Your mind's good because you're reading 10 to 12 pages every single day. You're doing the meditations. Ultimately, you're going to begin to feel yourself changing.
Yeah.
And it's going to be so quick that you're like, wow, like I didn't even notice like that 21 days just went by and I'm doing all these things that I said. So now that we're achieving, like last week when we told you, the effort, the performance, and the ability. So you're doing all those three things. You're increasing confidence in yourself, and now you're accomplishing goals.
Yeah.
Well, now once you're accomplishing goals, your confidence is building so much that you literally feel like you can do anything.
And take that from a side note. I mean, if you guys have been
Yes.
watching, thank you so much, and we appreciate that. But again, like the things that he's talking about, they're tiny victories, and
Tiny
they
things.
add up together. And what's really interesting is how this all ties together, not just for the physical, but in the mental and the spiritual side of things too. Was there anything else you wanted to go in there? Or is it okay? Cool. So going into that emotional, just the same way that we're talking about physical, I think this emotional, mental, the capabilities of your own within yourself. What's really important is that just as you're training your body to do these different things, is you have to train your body to focus on these mental capabilities you have as well, which is I mean, in capacity is sometimes what we went through school for. I mean, I'm in graduate school right now, and I'm testing my mental capabilities every day. But it doesn't just have to be school. It could be anything. Like I love learning. I love watching TED Talks and listen to different podcasts and learning from other individuals. I think I learn most as a teacher. I try to my most important thing that I'm trying to relate to the students that I have is I had this teacher. Her name's Jessica Morris, and she really changed my perspective of how to teach people, and not only a setting that is in academic, but in any other way, is that while I'm talking to someone, while I'm doing something, the information that, if they're trying to show me information, whatever it is, sure, that information is really important, but I care more of what that person thinks about that information and what I can get out of them from that information and how that transfer of knowledge is going to be because of how in depth and what they think of it. And that's the way I try to teach my students, is that what I'm coming out of my mouth and what I'm going to help them accomplish is much more important than what the information on the board. Sure, it's great to know, but there's that, and that tested my mental self-care, because it allows me this same thing you guys can do every day, is that whether it be your job, whether it be some of your hobbies, whatever you like to do, try, like, it's a mental capacity of doing. If you get in the same pattern sometimes, like I can tell you in my last relationship, I got into this pattern of playing League of Legends. I don't know if you ever heard of that game. 45-minute games. I get home and just get into this pattern of going to work, playing games, not doing anything, and like, it's not a good place to be in. You have to make sure that you're making a conscious effort to always better yourself in all different aspects of your life and understand 100%. The actual patterns you're going through so that you can focus on the self-care.
Yeah, and a lot of things that, that come mentally, like, we're stressed all the time, our emotions are running wild, like our hormones, like we have that significant other that's right beside us that we think's our soulmate, but we don't really know. And we get so caught up in competing with other people because we live in the day and age where there's so much noise going around. They say the human brain has somewhere around 60,000 thoughts a day. 60,000 thoughts. So, if we can even, cut those in half, can you imagine how much more energy that you're going to have to focus on the things that you actually need?
Yeah.
Creating the life that you want, putting the energy towards your physical and your mental stimuluses. There's so many things that you can go into that. But I think ultimately my biggest takeaway from, the mental portion of self-care is come from a place of gratitude. no matter what it is, like if someone's talking crap to you, really think about like, okay, well maybe they're just kind of spewing hate towards me because they're going through something.
Yeah.
The same thing with your journey. I did bodybuilding, as many years, like since I was 14, and it's still something I'm really, really passionate about, like to this day. And I used to compare myself so much to other people. I would see these people online. I'm like, God, my biceps don't look like that. My abs don't look like that. Like, I'm never going to get there.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I was literally putting so much worry that I wasn't growing.
Yeah.
Like, it was just, I was worried about the end goal. So, be grateful for that process. Be grateful for the journey that you're actually on. And it's like when you come from a place of gratitude, the switches in your brain, they switch. And now you become, instead of worrying about these other people, you're like, man, they're really putting in the work. Now I got to really put in the work.
Yeah.
And you begin to get to a point where you stop comparing yourself to other people. And you realize ultimately it's me versus me.
Yeah. I think one of the most, I heard something recently was talking about competition and how a lot of people have been going out there and dealing with this competition, and how, like, I had this wrong mindset, is that I always wanted to be better than someone, and I wanted to be like, because I mean, gymnastics, cheerleading, like, your goal is to be the best individual and try to win these trophies, do all these different things. But at the end of the day, the healthy competition is where, hey, you may be on a different team, but I want you to be the best person you can be and do the best you can do. And like that's where I came across in cheerleading for my last 4 years, is that we had very talented teams. We had all these different things, but at the end of the day, like, if you thought about it, would you rather go out there and do a really fantastic routine and win, and the rest of the other teams do horrible? Or would you rather everyone do fucking fantastic, and then really put your all out there, and then everyone's saying that they really did that? And that's where my competition mindset has changed. It's where is that if I'm winning, I want you to be winning too, and not just the sense of here's this prize. It's we're all out there to do the best of our own capabilities. Whether we end up winning or losing doesn't matter. It's that process of knowing that we put our all into it, and understanding that everyone's like that everything you do, everything everyone else does is. It's their life. Have you ever thought back and you've been driving down the highway or something, and you're like, damn, every single car I pass is someone, and someone has a full life, and I have no idea what's going on in their life, or the different things that are going on. Everyone has their own different lives, and you got to live yours to the best of your ability. And that's really where you have to think about that competition in your mind, and how that really can affect you. Come from that place of gratitude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, ultimately, to kind of wrap up the mental note on this podcast, I think just improving your positive thinking. It's something that will help you so much, because it's going to make you less susceptible to stress, depression, anxiety. Because a lot of that, I mean, it's literally just thoughts that put us in those states, of worry or of fear,
Exactly.
And all these different things that. If you can get to a point where you can stop that thought mid-thought, it's like, man, I'm worrying about this right now. Like, I have all these bills coming in, and turning it to a point of, I have everything that I need. I know that I'm going to be taken care of. And regardless of the fact if it's true or not, you will eventually begin to believe that.
Yeah.
And so over time, just keep changing and improving that positive thinking. And ultimately, I think that your mental state will be a whole lot better. So we'll move on to our next portion, which is going to be our spiritual. Namaste. But I think for this, I'm going to really dive into like being alone, because I know people with self-care, they believe that they find it in someone else, and ultimately that's not true. I think that especially for relationships, like I said, I was in a relationship for almost 7 years, and we recently split up and all that, but that's a different story. But I figured out, like, when I was going through all this stuff and I was all by myself, that I was really afraid to be alone. Like, I was petrified of it.
We all are.
And, for the first couple of weeks, like, I was very, very detrimental to myself. I mean, I was drinking, I was doing anything because I didn't want those thoughts of being alone. So ultimately what I did was I immersed myself in nature. I have a dog, his name's Loki. He's part wolf, part husky, big old boy. But I literally would just take him on hikes and walks, and people that know me, like I'm a big martial arts person. I would literally sit in the woods for hours with a set of gloves on and just have it out with nature. Yeah, literally just hash it out. And I found some of the most humbling experiences out there in the woods because it was just me being immersed in nature, and I had so much time to just kind of find myself. And on the spiritual side of things, when you're having these thoughts, whether they're good or bad, write them down. And when you go back and you read that thought, you're going to be able to feel that emotion that comes along with it. So, we know that this is something bad that we're feeling. We're feeling anxiety towards this thought. So let's change it. If it's something good, like I remember when I especially, like, I was doing a lot of my martial arts training, it got to a point where, my cardiovascular endurance was so great that, I had to push and push to get myself tired. Like,
this man can run 7-8 miles, and he does not. I'm not doing that, but that's him. He's doing great.
And I had months, literally, where I would do 100-mile months. And just push myself. And what I found is that this positive self-talk, like all my track people, y'all probably know this out there. When you're running down, you're doing your 400 meter, and you're on that last 100 meters, and you're gassed. You say something, your brain's telling you to stop, and you say, "Shut the fuck up." You keep going. And, that positive thought, man, I think that's something that really goes a long way. And I just can't stress how important it actually is.
I think one of the most interesting facets of these self-care is definitely spirituality and understanding. I'm on the path of discovering my own spiritualness, but we'll get into that in other times. But something that's really, really important is that I feel, in my own case, and I think many others as well, is that we're really scared to face our own self. Like, luckily, our generation in anything, we grew up with so much around us, so much changing, so much.
Technology came in right as we were all growing up.
There's so many cases of parents being divorced, broken families, so many financial struggles. You didn't know anything. There's everyone has their own things in their life, but growing up with this technology, Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, all these different things, school, friends, drinking, drugs, whatever it is, it's all an escape at the same time. And it took me so long to realize that I was trying to escape my own self and my own thoughts and how I thought. And I'm a very indecisive person, but I'm becoming more decisive because I'm finally understanding what's in here, who Nick is and who Nick is speaking, what he cares about, what he's doing, all these things. And that, I know we talk about meditation and different things, but being alone, because I just went through a breakup as well. And we're good friends, it's fantastic. But
it's something that you really you don't know it until you actually go through it.
Yeah.
And it puts you in a mental state where it's like a make or break. And you're either going to break yourself or you're going to make something so much better.
Yeah, and that really goes down to, you can't be scared to analyze your own self. Mm-hmm. And that's the most important thing I think about, that a lot of older people get because they've gone through so much struggle and had to be alone and had to do these things. And the more, I think, the revolution that we're going upon right now in our society, which is going to be one of the most important revolutions of all.
Yes.
Not industrial, not technological, it's going to be mental health. And I think one thing that we all need to do is address your own self. Address the problems you have, whether it be bad or good, whatever it is. If you understand your situation, you're going to know what to do.
Yeah.
But, or at least somewhat like some tiny steps. Remember we talked about that ladder, okay? But addressing that inner self is going to be so important to and crucial to your self-care. You have to know who you are to begin to start to change and start to do different things. And I've struggled with it. The other day I was sitting there, it was pretty late at night, and I was like, I don't want to meditate. I really don't. I've been on and off meditating for the past couple weeks. It's hard.
It's very hard to stay consistent with it.
And it gave me anxiety, and then I was like, fuck, I gotta do it. And I closed my eyes.
Probably one of the best ones that you've ever had.
Yeah, I started breathing, and then I sat there, and afterwards, and I just talked to myself and addressed the things that I had that were going on. Again, we talked about being grateful. I was talking about the things that I'm very grateful for. And the things that I have going on in my life and successes and the downfalls, and I really addressed all those, and it wasn't too long, maybe 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And afterwards I got out and I took a deep breath afterwards. I always tell myself, you're great, everything you're doing is fantastic, and you have to believe in yourself and always push forward, something like that. Yeah. And that gratitude for my own self doing it, I got out and I just, that anxiety, that stress, just shed it off me like a 200-pound weight. And it's just wild when you take that into consideration.
Man, it's so true. Going on what he said, like, I'm going to dive into the 3 rules of self-care, what kind of why we're going on this topic, because this is perfect.
Yeah.
So number 1, I feel like we've hit really good, was just stick to the basics of life. Simplicity, compassion, and patience. These 3 are the greatest treasures, simple... So these 3, sorry, I bumped the camera, so sorry, guys. These 3 are the greatest treasures. You need to be simple in your actions and thoughts and return to your source of being. So that, for me, like I was telling you when I was going through everything, it was really returning to nature, invoking myself in nature. Your thoughts, you need to return to that source of being. So again, like I was saying, get back to your source. Like, find what makes you you. Find what makes you confident.
And like that could be, you have no idea who that is, and maybe you think you do, and maybe sitting back and really like allowing yourself, if you're in a relationship, it's okay to have you time. I think that's one of the things that was really I struggle with too, is you don't have to be there. Like you have to focus on you to be the best you can for your relationship. Keep going.
And ultimately, I'm going to continue with my quote after that, but ultimately, like, remember that you can't give away something that you don't have for yourself. So if you're telling someone else that you love them and ultimately you don't love yourself, it's kind of like, it's two-sided at that point, because how do you give away something that you don't have?
Yeah.
So this goes on to the point is, be patient with both your friends and your enemies. And depending on whatever situations coming arouse, come from a place of compassion and gratitude, because ultimately, if you do that, you are not going to give anyone power over yourself. You're not going to allow them to pull something negative out of you that's from like your old self. Like, you just really just focus on yourself. So like I said, number 1, stick to the basics of life: simplicity, compassion, and patience.
Yeah.
So number 2, I'm gonna let Nick kind of hit off on it on first.
Yeah. So these no lists, and like it's really important, because again, like you are an accumulation of your experiences and the knowledge that you've come across. Mm-hmm. And like, we don't do enough of analyzing the things we do. I've started this thing where a while back, it's been for a while, every interview I have, I evaluate myself and see what I can do better. But when are we doing that for our own lives? And we have to understand that we have all these to-do lists, and we have to make sure we understand what a to-do, not to-do list is too. Like, I'm not going to go outside and step on hot concrete in the middle of the summer, because I've done that before. But like, not that exact example, but know the things that are harmful to your situation, whether that be drinking or whatever it is. Come up with your own no list and understand the things that can really mess up either your physical, your mental, your spiritual self-care routines. Like, I know that brushing my teeth at night, brushing my teeth in the morning is essential. I want to have good breath. I don't want people to be like, damn, this boy got hot breath. And I'm like, then what am I going to do? Maybe I'm at work. Like, I have to know that brushing my teeth every morning and brushing that, knowing that I know to my no list, my top of it is make sure I brush my teeth every night. And I make sure I'm not brushing my teeth every night. Doing things like this, or breaking it down into this no list and this to-do list and these do lists, is going to allow you to move forward at a faster rate than you thought.
And, going off of what he said, what we ultimately get in life is our standards. So when you can really put those out and write them down and prioritize them from least to greatest, you're going to see ultimately in life what's important to you. And the reason for the no list for me is because I found that there's a lot of things that I was doing, like hobbies and social aspects, that they really weren't serving me and they weren't aligning up with my ultimate goal.
Yeah.
So that's ultimately why you want that list, is to see if, the traits and the characteristics that you're displaying, if they're ultimately going to get you to that end goal. It's going along. I had a really great conversation with my sister. Her name's Kristen, and she's actually in nursing school right now.
Yeah.
She's got 2 children. She's going through a lot of stuff like mentally and emotionally as well. But she's pushing herself through nursing school. It's hard. But one of the things that she talked to me, she was like, I realized that I need to focus on myself, and I need to be healthy. So one of the things we were talking about is diet. And I think people get such a misconception from diet because they think that it's so hard and that you can't eat well.
No.
But really, when you begin to just kind of tweak little things, like let's say in the morning, instead of going and having my McDonald's chicken McGriddle, which are great if you haven't had one, I'm sorry, they're so
Bacon,
good.
egg and cheese McGriddle, sausage, egg and cheese McMuffin, 2 hash browns, and a large orange juice. That's my order, y'all.
Yeah. But they're so good. They're so good. But maybe focusing on like Monday through Friday, I set the goal for myself that, okay, breakfast, I'm going to have oatmeal. My lunches and dinners, I'm going to go ahead and have them prepped so they're done. And then guess what? On the weekends, now I'm going to reward myself because I did so great throughout the week. And I think that's what a lot of people think, is that you just have to make this switch so quickly. And you don't have to. It's your little tweaks. Your little tweaks go the longest way.
It's that ladder, y'all. That ladder of success. Listen, that's an optimism term right there. That ladder of success. We got to climb those rungs step by step.
Step by step. Yeah. Hammer by hammer. So going on to my 3rd rule of self-care. So again, we had number 1, stick to the basics of life. Number 2, create your no list. And then number 3, which this is a quote by Rumi. I'm gonna go ahead and let Nick go ahead.
Listen, we can dive into this a little bit deeper too, but I want you guys to I want you to breathe with me, just be with me and understand this, okay? Have a mind that is attached to nothing, but be open to everything. Now breathe in through your nose and exhale everything.
And with the good,
out with the negative.
out with the bad.
Listen, you are capable of more than you could ever know. And the only way to understand that is understand that information is going to flow through you. And what you take from it and what you make out of it, whether that be negativity or optimism, anger, whatever you want it to be, is what you make it. You have to understand that if you have an optimistic point of view and you take all this information in, whatever it is, I can tell you the same thing I go through work. I'll have an angry customer come in. You messed up my food. Oh my God. What you do? Okay, man. I'll replace it for you. No worry. The second you sit there and don't let negativity penetrate, it ain't penetrating me. I got my shield up.
Exactly.
My optimism. What is someone coming in?
You got that optimism shield up. Bing, 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 bing.
Listen, like you're Captain America out here. You got your shield. You threw it at them. That optimism just hit them in the face. And what they gonna do? They just came at you so angry. They're shocked. Yeah. Oh my goodness! Why is this man so happy, so optimistic about this? He doesn't even care that I'm mad. No, I care that you're mad, but there's no reason to get angry about it.
And I love this too. I'm just gonna brag on him for a second because a year ago we tried to start this podcast. We wrote a lot of topics. We have over 300 topics that we wanted to talk on, and a lot of stuff happened. Like I said, I had my hardship, like he had his, but just to see his mental capacity, just to see his way of thinking switch has been so humbling because, for myself, like when I was going through this, I was like, people are going to think I'm crazy when I try to tell them this stuff. They're going to be like, no, you're a batshit. Like this stuff is not possible. And the thing is like I kept finding more and more people who are on the similar path as I am, man. And it's just so freaking eye-opening, and it is so humbling. Guys, so it's kind of like what he said, be open to everything. Keep that optimism shield up so that when you begin to think like this and you're changing your thought processes, you're going to be able to notice this. You're going to be like, wow, this person is spewing hate on me right now. Well, guess what? I'm about to slam them with kindness.
Killing them with kindness. What are they going to do?
And ultimately, when you do that and you come from that place, guys, like, you're going to change the conscious level of the people around you.
Yeah.
And you know, you may not see it for the first 6 months, but when you first see it, you're going to become so addicted to changing your thoughts.
Yeah. So I think we've done a really good job of talking about the three different types of self-care and the three different rules of self-care. I want to dive into a little bit. Like today, this week, I asked of Instagram followers for our account, Let's Open Doors, and my own social media account. I asked some of the things they do for self-care, and I'll talk about what they've done and some of the things that are really helpful to us that might help you guys out. Time for make time for yourself to recharge. Again, we talked about sleep. Like, you guys go through a lot of things. Again, we have 60,000 thoughts a day. Like, being able to recharge from all that's super important.
Yeah, and just kind of quieting it down, man. Like, sell your cleverness and purchase bewilderment.
Yeah.
Find what makes you ultimately, and you know, make a routine that you can stick to. Nothing that's crazy. Yeah. Just make something that's easy. You know, waking up in the morning, doing my stretch. You know, reading 10 pages a day. Ultimately, for self-care, you want to flood yourself with as much confidence building material as you can.
Yeah, and then not letting other people's penetrating your optimism. Like, we just talked about that. That's an optimism right there, y'all.
Yeah. Have that shield of optimism all around you.
I mean, not judging yourself, haircuts, making sure you sleep, holding your own self in a higher regards than what others think of you.
Exactly.
Rewarding yourself. That's super important too. Don't let others judge you. Yeah. You're fucking awesome. You better remember that shit.
Yeah.
Nick told you. You better remember that shit. What else? And
you know, ultimately, just hold yourself accountable. Yeah. And, you know, like I said, guys, we are our standards. So, in turn, if you're going to tell yourself you're the lowest of the low, guess what? You're going to be the lowest of the low. If you tell yourself you're the baddest motherfucker on this earth, I promise you will be the baddest. Yeah. But you got to put in the work and take good care of yourself.
Think about one thing that I really want y'all to take away from this, and is it doesn't have to be daily. It doesn't have to be... but maybe once a week.
It's a process.
Yeah, think about what you're doing physically to make sure that you're all right. Make sure that you're doing what you need to be doing. What are you doing mentally to do that? What are you doing spiritually? Because a lot of people don't tie these three together. But how are these three things really working to benefit you in your life? What are you doing to benefit yourself? Yeah, and in that too, if you find those things and you sit back and look at that, like, share those with someone else. Talk about it. And I want you guys to be open to, like, sharing these thoughts, because it's important to put your own thoughts in the world, because guess what? That makes them more real. And other people are going to hold yourself to those accountability of what you're thinking too.
And you never know just what saying something to someone, they could be thinking the exact same thoughts, but not even know that you're kind of on this same path. And you can change a life in a moment's time. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that we ultimately have to be grateful for. So guys, that's it for us today on Open Doors. If you found anything from this podcast that is relevant to you or that has helped your situation, the only thing that we ask is you share it with one person. And I think ultimately, guys, let's try to come from a place of gratitude and let's open some doors.
Hey, listen, go follow our account on Instagram. It's lets.open.doors. And then we have our YouTube channel, our podcast. If you guys want to follow us, I'm at Nick Sternloff. It's at Zachary Otts. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in, and it's time to develop our own opportunities by reinforcing our success.
You guys have a blessed day, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.